the Golden Stallion, the Man of Tomorrow, Sabzu, the Rated R Radio Star, here for your Patreon Wednesday Q&A. And oh, baby, have I got some big questions for this one. Not any tech questions. I've gotten some tech questions, but there's a couple of questions that I really wanted to get into in this episode because it plays off well from last week's episode. Or should I say more specifically last week's Q&A, Patreon Q&A episode, which, by the way, our live Q&A will be coming up, I believe, next week. Of course, I'm recording this on our live hangout where you get to be on. You can be on the show. You can ask questions. Hell, you can be on video, audio, whatever, or you could just ask them in the YouTube live chat. But we do it live, baby. But it'll be next week. This is being recorded on actually, it's on Tuesday the 12th, even though I'm going to release it on Wednesday. But so be ready for that. That's coming. But got a couple of philosophical questions, and then maybe if we have time, I want to get into a bigger question, or not a bigger. It's about getting big, though. I might get into a fitness question that was asked to me as well. So, but we'll see what we have time for. But there's two big questions that I really want to get into. And so we'll start it off with a question about anarchism, and this is from a patron, and it has to do with something I've talked about recently and a statement that I made recently, which is, in fact, they repeat it for me here in their message, quote, anything other than anarchism isn't ethical, end quote. So I'm going to read the rest of this person's message, and then we're going to break right into it. You said that. I'm reading the email. I'm not sure I fully understand anarchism or perhaps the philosophy behind it. I've never concerned myself much with labels. I just try to do me and be happy with that. First off, Stanley breaking in, that's fine. Really at the end of the day, that's all you can do is you. But at the end of the day also, that's sort of what anarchism is. But anyway, let's read on. A few years ago, I found Free Talk Live. Through that, he found me through Free Talk Live because I used to be a co-host on there for those that don't know. I was a co-host for 2 years on Free Talk Live, which is a nationally syndicated, huge radio show. Really, it really is a major radio show. Free Talk Live I fell in love with for a time. So many of these ideas were ones that resonated with me, yet I'd never had them put in words before. Never having subscribed to a political philosophy or any other ideology, libertarianism seemed closer than anything I'd heard before. Don't consider myself a libertarian or anything else even now. Been listening to you talk about anarchism for years now. It resonates with me more than anything else. Yet I'm still not there. Part of my problem is, honestly, I simply don't like thinking about such things too much. I struggle with my mind monkeys daily and oft retreat into a haze of distractions, but I'm rambling a bit. Can you help me understand anarchism better, specifically in regards to the quote, anything other than anarchism isn't ethical, end quote. Love everything you do, even when I don't agree. You live life like I wish I was strong enough of character to do so. With respect. Wow. First off, that last line, living the life strong enough of character, you live life like I wish I was strong enough of character to do so. I am really honored by that. I don't know if I live up to that, but I'm really, really honored by that. Really, I know in your message here, you said you just do you, and that's enough, and you don't have any ideology that you necessarily subscribe to, etc., blah, 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 blah. I mean, you're really doing anarchism right there. That's all I do. I know what I want. The ability for an individual, and we are individuals, we are not all one. We have our bubble universes in our head that are ours and ours alone. No one else accesses, no one else connects to. It's just us. Okay. We are individuals. Each one of us are an individual. We are not connected in any meaningful, well, I shouldn't say in any meaningful. We are not connected in any like quantum way or some kind of horse shit like that, or some kind of Akashic record. It's just not so. Everything is not connected. Sorry. So anyway, so you just doing you, that's it, right? That's all I do. The most important for an individual to be able to, I would argue that the goal in life is to be, the purpose of life for a human being is to be happy. That is your end goal at all times. Okay. The only way you can really achieve that is if you can answer the question, what do I want? This is a very important question. Okay. And in fact, what do I want, I think, answers a lot of the other major philosophical questions, like who are you? Among, I mean, there's others. Okay. So if the goal, I mean, and again, you have to accept some of these premises that I'm laying before you. If the goal in life is to be happy, now, if you don't think that the primary goal of the human condition, of human life, is to be happy, then everything I'm about to say to you is meaningless. Okay. So you kind of have to agree, or you don't have to, but for what I'm about to say to mean something, this is a point you would have to agree with. So then to be happy, you have to be able to answer the question, what do you want? What do I want? Myself, and perhaps if I have any courage in life, I'm not claiming to live the life that I want to, it comes from the fact that I am certain that I know very well, to a high level of precision, what I want. I know what happiness to me looks like. I really know what it looks like. And if you don't know, that's okay. A lot of people don't. And I'm not saying there's anything necessarily wrong with that, but I am saying, get to exploring that. What really makes you happy without external factors. Okay. What intrinsically makes you happy? Though that's a very important thing to answer. Okay. And that comes from the question, what do you want? So when you can start to answer that, then you can start working towards achieving that happiness in your life. However, okay, and again, this all comes from the base point. All right, I'm not even getting into morality and all that other stuff. That gets into a huge other conversation, okay, because morality really, I mean, let's just face it, morality doesn't exist. It has no measure, okay? Morality is a social contract, and it's a social construct, all right? And those things are things that you choose to take part of, or you should be able to choose to take part of. In our present world, often it comes with the butt of the gun, or threats of hell, or some other kind of terrible, punishment if you don't accept the social contract. Okay, morality just does not exist. It can be a useful term. I use it sometimes. Ethics I sometimes use, but really, whenever I'm talking about ethics and things like that, and when I say ethical, it means leading towards that goal in life, which is being happy. Okay. Now, the only system that gives you not the guarantee, okay, not the guarantee that you'll be happy. It's not happy that comes at the cost of anyone else's happiness or anything like that, okay, which one could argue that governments and other forms of tyrannies and domination systems would be. The only system that gives you the option, which real freedom's all about options. We say that all the time. The only system that gives you options and that gives you the framework and the ability to, or at least the openness, the ability to actually achieve that happiness, to get what you want out of life, is anarchism. Is no gods, no masters. Straight up. Power is horizontal, okay? No hierarchies, at least not hierarchies as we understand them now. So if the ultimate, again, so here's the progression. If the goal in life is to be happy, okay, the only ethical thing, or if and that is the basis of ethics, okay, is that your goal in life is happiness. All right, the only system that gives you the best chance, that gives you all of the options, okay, that gives you all of the opportunities to achieve that happiness is anarchism. So anarchism is literally, in that way, is the only ethical system. Government will get in the way without your choosing, and it is unnecessary from you achieving your happiness. Okay, so government is unethical, like that's just straight up. I mean, and it's a fiction anyway, and again, it falls under that same description of what I was talking about earlier, with it being a phantasm, it being a social construct. I mean, like it's just not there. Now, The other parts of why anarchism is the only thing that's ethical is that there are certain what I would call biological universals. Maybe you've heard me describe all this stuff before, but I hope I'm giving you the progression and the understanding of, why I feel confident in making that statement. Okay, and I'll get to the number one critique here in a second. All right. You have certain biological universals, such as empathy, perhaps even sex drive. For varying reasons, some of these things may be, humans may be out of touch from. There could be, there could be medical conditions why they're out of touch with them. There could be traumatic reasons that are not, a part of your DNA. Okay, at least from the beginning, that are why you aren't in touch with empathy, or maybe even with your sex drive, or things like this. Okay, a few of these different biological universals. Okay. Now, these biological universals can also be considered a basis for ethics, for what is ethical. Okay, but understand that a lot of these biological universals, such as empathy and others, and maybe a couple other different biological universals, do allow for the, really when you understand them, you see that they allow for a framework that is conducive to your happiness. So it's almost like a lot of yes, people feel pain. Like there are biological universals that aren't all about pleasure. Okay, I completely understand that. All right. But there are biological universals that are based upon how you interact, you as an individual, with other individuals that gauge, that have some bearing and control, like empathy, on how you respond to, other people, without even the external stimuli of, say, them hitting you or something like that, like just how you respond to them straight up. Okay, that is not a social construct. It's not a social contract. All right, it is something that is a part of who you are biologically as a human being, such as empathy. All right, now under empathy, like if you're an empathetic individual, are you going to want to rule over somebody else? And tell them what to do and boss them around and effectively make them your slave or something like that? Probably not. I mean, I get it. You could have kinks and maybe some other stuff, that you're into. But only like the wildest of kinksters will enact that stuff 24/7, like 100% 24/7. Like a woman has to always think that or a guy, because a guy can be the bottom, say in a BDSM relationship of some kind, where they think, oh yeah, no, I'm the slave all day long, blah, 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 blah. But even then, that kind of has to do sort of with their happiness. That's where we get into complexities of this conversation. But bottom line being is that you have biological universals that have bearing on how you interact with other individuals. And those generally are concerned with your happiness as well as the happiness of that other person and trying to get them to a happy state, which is why I feel comfortable in saying that the goal of life is to be happy, particularly like empathy. And empathy doesn't, I can't, just try to imagine that Donald Trump became president out of empathy. Make that argument to me. No. Tell me any senator, any of these guys, any politician, give me the leader that you think became a leader out of empathy. Anybody that was ever even offered to be a leader that I think would have some degree of empathy would probably say, don't make me that. I don't want that. I don't want to rule over other people. I don't want to tell other people what to do. Maybe I just want to be left alone. And that comes from, that's how they want to be treated, and that's how they want to treat others. That's empathy. You see what I mean? So I think that these two concepts kind of come together, that the goal in life is to be happy, but I think that is absolutely an outcropping just of certain the biological makeup of human beings. Okay, I don't believe that the natural state of the human being, I'm not saying that it's not okay, or that it's an evil or something, but I'm just saying that, suffering is not necessarily like a natural state, right? I mean, that's why you have so many imperatives to get away from suffering, because it's not meant to be what you're not supposed to be suffering. So, I mean, and of course that gets into hedonism, but anyway, so yeah, when I say anarchism is the only thing ethical, it's because it's the only system and it's really an anti-system. It's not a system. Done properly, it's not a system at all. Okay, there's, again, no gods, no masters, no rulers. All right, it's the only one that gives you the options that gives you the openness, the framework to allow you to achieve your happiness, whatever it may be. Now, the critique to that would be, well, what if killing people makes somebody happy? Okay. Or what if, being a king and a tyrant makes somebody happy? Well, this gets back to trauma. And this gets back to, not being in touch with biological universals that not just humans have. Rats have empathy. I know I say that a lot, but, rats are often considered, rightly or wrongly, the lowest life on Earth. Well, guess what? The lowest life on Earth understands empathy. It's a part of life. And outside of Ninja Turtles, there isn't a rat king. Okay? But so my point being is that when somebody has those desires, I think there's something broken. I think there's something got messed up. And I will be the first to blame their parents. I'll be the first or somebody that inflicted some kind of childhood trauma on them. That's where so many things stem from. Okay. But that doesn't mean that it's and you got to be careful because you can fall into the naturalistic fallacy, but I don't think that it's a primal condition. Instead of saying a natural condition, I'll say a primal condition of human existence. I just don't, I don't, oh boy, I could go in a lot of directions with this, but that's my answer to that. To say, well, there's people that just want to see the world burn. Well, there's something wrong with them. All right. But for your everyday individual that either has done the therapy to get out of the trauma or, to get through the trauma or has worked through the trauma or whatever, that's in touch with the empathetic, aspects of themselves, that's in touch with, the healthy biological drives that they may have, whatever else. Okay. And understand before somebody says it, and I say this all the time too, but here, this is scientific fact. Sex is not just about procreation. It is it co-evolved as social interaction and as, and as procreation. Okay. So sex doesn't have to be about procreation. It really can just be about social interaction. So saying somebody doesn't want to have children, I don't think that's affecting a biological universal necessarily. In fact, I mean, this gets into like the gay uncle theory, which is a total, absolutely an evolutionary psychology, theory. Okay. So that's getting into other things, but understand also we can act outside of our instincts. That's what makes us sapient. Okay. Is that we act outside of instinct. So I'm getting into, a much broader subject here, but my point being, okay, is that, a human, a healthy, and that's tough because that's a judgment, but a healthy human being is all about their happiness, and when you're about your happiness, then yeah, anything that obstructs your opportunity to achieve that happiness. Okay. And I'm talking about things like social constructs. Your empathy is going to keep you from wanting to hurt somebody else anyway. All right. So like other people, just doing their thing is not really going to get in their way. The thing is that government and a lot of these other domination structures, okay, it's not just a human being. Like it's a group. It's not interacting with individuals. These are literally completely unethical systems that obstruct you without your choice. Or even if you choose, then it affects somebody else's choice within some kind of geographic landmass. Okay, so there's the problem. So yeah, anarchism is the only ethical thing because it's the only thing that gives you the greatest. It's what gives you the greatest amount of options and the greatest chances, okay, for achieving your happiness. So there's my answer to that. I hope that answers that. I hope what I said made sense. There's a lot of avenues I could go down. I mean, that's a huge subject really to get into. But again, people don't. If I know the old Thomas Paine, I think it was Thomas Paine, maybe it was Thomas Jefferson, but I'm pretty sure it was Thomas Paine, where if men were angels, they wouldn't need government, right? And if there were angels, like, they could rule men. I don't know, however the fuck that went. Anyway, but if men were angels, they wouldn't need government. And I get it. Saying when the statement I'm about to make makes it sound like, makes it sound like, oh, well, yeah, okay, if we had perfect people, then it would be great. Look, if people were in touch with their empathetic selves, okay, and work through, even the past traumas that they've had to deal with and domination structures and all that, okay. If you're in touch with that, I mean, you really don't need government. You don't need it anyway, and it's unethical for it to, again, like I said, for it to exist as is. Like, I mean, even the action of voting. Do you understand that voting, like, where does that right come from? Rights are a phantasm itself that kind of falls under the social constructs of morality. But let's just say that for shorthand, the right to vote, like, where does that, like, what part of, like, look at a baby. Okay, just look at a baby, look at a human baby and say, well, why does that get to vote? Especially, like, say, for government. You say it doesn't. Well, then it's not a part of the fucking human condition. Okay? And it's not like just because somebody hits puberty, suddenly they have the right to government or the right to vote. I mean, the right, that right doesn't exist. It's not in the Bill of Rights. It's not even in the fucking Constitution. Like, I mean, yeah, voting is in the Constitution, but in the Bill of Rights part of it, there's no right to vote because it's not a right. That also, even if under rights theory makes anarchism the only ethical option, because voting is not a primal part of the human condition. It's not a natural part of the human condition. And you could say it goes beyond instinct, okay, but then it's not rights, it's some kind of choice, and if you can't choose to not be part of it, well, then you're unethical. I did it, in fact, there's a great, on my YouTube channel, I took out a segment that the lovely and hyper-intelligent Dr. Stephanie Murphy and I did on a Sovereign Tech years ago about voting, where we said, like, look, this is the reason why voting is not okay and why playing in electoral politics is not okay. You can check that out. I don't have that many videos on my YouTube channel. You can watch it. It's gotten quite a few views, actually, along with some of my other videos on there. So anyway, I'm not sure where I was going with that, but yeah, I hope I answered the question. And again, if people's happiness has to do with, like, injuring others and all that stuff, I think, there's some stuff there's some traumas that person has to work out. Okay. Oh, I know what I was going to say. Okay. Yeah. So with empathy, like, you're just not going to want to harm other human beings. It's just not, you got to be in touch with that. And you can say, well, all of humanity is never going to be in touch with that. I agree with you. That doesn't mean that because you want government to protect you from, the sociopaths or psychopaths or whatever, okay, that doesn't mean that government is an ethical institution. It means it's something that you thought was like the lesser of two evils, dealing with the psychopaths and sociopaths, or dealing with the, or dealing with the government, which in my opinion, I just repeated myself. Okay. But you get my point. So, again, the only, like I've said this over and over again, to experience anarchism, it's only going to be experienced in pockets. You're going to find, the amount of people, and this gets into the Dunbar number, which I think is another biological universal that needs paying attention to, especially as it applies to ethics and all that you can only have like 5 to 15 deep relationships, and meaningful relationships you can only have up to, like, say 150 to 250, depending upon the research that you're looking at as far as Dunbar's number goes. Okay. So that's something else to consider. But I think that also kind of points at the direction that, okay, well, how do you achieve anarchism? Well, it's by having it in small pockets where people really can know each other. And then, that solves a lot of the problems that a lot of people say government is needed to fix. Okay. So that's another thing. Again, yeah, I don't think we're ever going to have a completely empathetic, anarchistic planet. It's just not going to happen. All right. That's not a depressing thought, at least not to me. I just know I find, my group of people that want to coexist with me. peaceful coexistence and learn. And I go forward. And that's another conversation for another time, talking about, finding that group of people, that small group of people to create your anarchist paradise with. And I really think you can do it. Like I say that all the time. You can get 99% of the way there. You might have to pay a land tax or something, but otherwise you can enjoy really an anarchist paradise in a very real sense, even in a world full of governments. So anyway, let's get on to another question. This is, oh boy, this is a big one. So, and this actually came from someone who I might be a patron, but they originally wanted to share it in the Sovereign Tech Uncensored Facebook group. And it goes a little something like this. So this is in response to, for a few episodes, I had made mention of the notion of hard work. And I think this response, and I get what the person's saying, and I don't actually, kind of at the end of the day, I don't really have a problem with it. There's a misunderstanding. So when I would talk about hard work on Sovereign Tech, okay, what I mean by that is if you want to develop a skill, you have to put in the time, okay? Like Eratosthenes said, there's no royal road to geometry, okay? There's no cheats to really there's no cheats to greatness at something. The example I always use is that, or the phrase that I often say, and I think that this is partly in response to, is that, look, you can't be Tony Hawk unless you work at it. Okay. Unless you take the time. So when I say work, I mean specifically like to develop a skill. I don't necessarily mean work in the abstract that you have to go 9 to 5, blah, blah, blah. That's not what I mean by doing hard work. Hard work, I just mean that if you want to be good at something, you've got to put in the time. You've got to put in, the 10,000 hours, whatever, however that shapes up. You can say there might be a technology that might shortcut all that. Okay, fine. Then maybe, that will, like the Matrix, where you can jack in and suddenly you can fly a helicopter. Okay, we're not there yet, but maybe. All right. I'm not going to write that off. I'm saying it's impossible, but I'm just saying right now, as things stand, if you want to be good at something, you have to work towards it. That's what if I ever talk about work in a super positive light, or I talk about hard work, that's really what I mean. And if you take into context things I was talking about, you can tell that that's what I meant once you hear that. So anyway, this person was responding to the notion of work and hard work. And then a patron, who I love, he said, hey, could you talk about this? Could you respond to this whole thing? Because my only response to what was said here was that, yeah, I don't really have a problem with anything you said. And I clarified what I meant by hard work. So anyway, I'll read it and then we'll kind of break it down a bit. So this is the quote. And it, like I said, it's kind of lengthy. There is nothing inherently good or noble about quote unquote hard work when the work could just as easily be done by a machine. Okay. So I'm going to stop right there. And I just want to reiterate that what I meant was stuff that isn't done by a machine, but like if you want to be a great skateboarder, I mean, I guess there could be a machine that could help you out with that, but you've got to put in the work. You've got to do the hard work to develop those skills to be able to do that, or, whatever it takes. Even if you want to, like, say you want to be a comic book artist and, but you could use software that could do all the drawing for you. Great. But to make a great comic book, you still got to have more than that. You got to have the creativity, if you want to make something that expresses you and develops your own skill, right? Okay, so that's what I mean when I've used the term hard work. That's what I mean. Anyway, I'll read on. We need to stop creating and maintaining outdated jobs in the name of, quote, making sure everyone has a job, end quote, and instead focus on distribution of the overabundance of resources we already have now. To continue to live in such a dull, drudging, wasteful manner under capitalism when we have the knowledge and the means to create an automated economy is foolish, disgraceful, and indignity to our higher nature. Quote-unquote hard work in the modern American sense should be cast off with contempt once we lucidly see it as the chains that bind us to unnecessary suffering and economic entropy that they are. Our precious life force should be saved to be focused toward developing and fulfilling individual and collective, social, societal, creative, mental, and spiritual passions and needs. Stallion breaking in again real quick here. Spiritual, I know a lot of people get funny with that term. Boy, if there's any term that needs to die, spiritual is a term that needs to die. Of course, I'm an atheist. If you mean like the human spirit, as in, one's desire for happiness and things like that. Okay, maybe I get that. Spiritual passion, something that feels good intrinsically. Not your soul, there is no soul, but something intrinsically, I get that. Spiritual is a terrible term to describe that for. But maybe this person is, agnostic or somewhat religious, and so fine, spirituality means something to you. I'm just cutting in and saying, I wish that term would die. Anyway, hard work in the traditional soul-sucking, quote, by the sweat of your brow, number of hours on the clock, end quote, menial physical labor sense is by no means inherently good, especially when it means sacrificing time, doing things you love, and nourish your soul. Our view of hashtag work and relationship with hashtag work, again, this comes from a Facebook post, must radically change if we are going to take the next steps forward and progress as hashtag humans and a technologically advanced species. Up until now, in its current demented form, the propagation of the myth of the inherent morality and nobility of hard work in the context of the reign of capitalism has been a vital tool that capitalists have used to convince the working man to take part in the suicidal, systematic, thorough plundering of the Earth's formerly vast stockpile of resources in the name of progress, profit, business, and capitalism. A socialist, libertarian, all right, now let me stop there for a second. Those two terms can coexist, okay? Yes, they can. It's a conversation for another time, perhaps, but I have no problem with those two terms, and I know people that identify that way, and I totally get what they're saying, and they are all about freedom, and they are all about you having the choice to take part in their system or not. So relax when you hear the identifier social, or the ideology perhaps socialist libertarian. So a socialist libertarian, fully automated resource-based economy is what I recommend we start working towards to save our planet from capitalism's numerous and extreme inefficiency and human rights problems. Let's work towards an age of abundance, an age of freedom, an era of love. Okay. So, when I say I have no problem with what this person described, first, or I guess last off, because it's more towards the latter stuff, of a fully automated resource-based economy. If you want that, you can have that. And that's why I say I don't really have a problem with it, because as long as, we're not getting in each other's way, who cares? All right. Rock and roll, have a great time with it. Okay. I do have problems with, at least at the moment, the idea of a fully automated resource-based economy. This smacks very much of All Machines of Loving Grace. That's a poem. And it sort of requires central planning that I don't think ever really works. Not when you get to a certain scale anyway. You could have, I think, a fully automated resource-based economy at a very small scale. But as far as like across the board, and the same across the board, like there's one central power. I mean, no, that won't work. If you have like a bunch of them all over the place and they all have different, shall we say, like main servers that control how that resource-based economy kind of, doles stuff out or whatever, it could kind of work on that level. I'm not saying that that's the most efficient either. I'm just saying that, yeah, I could see where that could work. And as long as you kept it local, I don't care. Okay. Like I just don't, go ahead, right, knock yourself out, get 100 people together and make it happen. And you really could, you can make an economy, honestly, with very few people, especially when, we do have the machines that we have today. And when you open source stuff, like everybody can kind of make this shit. I mean, this is really possible. It's not, we are in this time where, individuals can do, it's almost like Snow Crash from Neil Stephenson or something, right? Or, it's close to it, where, yeah, people can be their own means of production in a very real sense, kind of like what Kevin Carson would talk about, homebrew industrial revolution, things like this. These are very possible, and the arguments for them, if you've never read them, please do not listen to other people, read them for yourself. Okay. Read Kevin Carson's work. The arguments are very sound as to how that can work. Okay, fine. But you got to keep it local. You cannot make one giant system for the entire planet Earth. That just, you can't really gauge that many people's needs at once and have, you just can't. I don't care how many processors you're running or whatever. That level of central planning just doesn't fucking work. Okay. There's a reason decentralization is a big deal. So anyway, and I don't know that the person was even saying, I'm not I don't know if that person was even suggesting something along those lines, but that it would be that at that scale where, there'd be that much central planning, but whatever. I'm just, cutting that off at the pass. Okay. Now to talk more about the hard work aspect. Okay. The hard work abstract. No. Yeah. Hard work's not a virtue. What you achieve, I mean, not to sound like Ayn Rand, but I mean, your productive achievement, that's the virtue. Like that's what's, that's what's inherently good, perhaps, is what you can achieve. Now, if you can achieve it without doing a whole lot of work, or if you can get your process down to where, you cut out a ton of time and you're not working a ton of hours on something. Okay. Well, I mean, that's an achievement in itself. That has nothing to do with hard work. So of course, honestly, I mean, I think anybody that does, I agree. I think anybody that thinks hard work is some kind of virtue, there's something wrong there. Okay. Because that's really not what the virtue is. What you achieve is the virtue. How you achieve that. Now, granted, the ends don't justify the means, but how you achieve that is kind of meaningless, right? What matters is what comes out of it. It's like saying, for example, let's take music or any field within art. Okay. If, there's some people like Eddie Van Halen where honestly, a lot of those songs come very easy to him and he makes instantaneous hits. But then you have, take another guitarist, I don't know, pick the name. I don't want to insult anybody. Okay. But just pick a name because nobody else is Eddie Van Halen. I mean, nobody's even really in his league. Just pick the name and it's harder for them. They have to work harder to achieve, a similar either amount of hits or even a hit. Now, are you going to say that Eddie Van Halen is a loser and that he's not virtuous because, he didn't work as hard as the other person did? No, of course not. So you're absolutely right. Hard work is not any kind of virtue. What you achieve, what you produce, there's a virtue in that. And there is no requirement for there to be hard work to produce something incredible. Or, I mean, and a lot of that comes down to subjective, value theory, of course. Okay. But yeah, so, if you're willing to work hard, okay, if you're willing to, really perhaps suffer and I don't like to use the term sacrifice, but go through a lot of shit to be able to achieve, to do what you needed to do to achieve something. There's something downright heroic, or I don't know if it's a virtue or if it's virtuous, but there's something worth respecting about that somebody put it all on the line to achieve their dreams. But that doesn't mean that the work in itself, just because the hard work was done, that there's virtue in work. Do you understand what I'm saying? I agree. I completely agree with what you're saying here. Okay. Again, if you put in the hard work and you're able to put into time and a human is able to perform at that level, I mean, sure, there's something that could be considered endearing about that. But the abstract notion of hard work, okay, and especially hard work within the 9 to 5 and stuff like that, no, there's nothing, and I think things have turned around. I agree. That's a very Puritan American ethic that should go away. And I think things are turning around where a lot of people are like, oh, you make that much money by only doing this? Well, fuck, that's phenomenal. Right. I mean, that's where the credit comes, is almost in doing less work, but still producing or achieving so much. So the tables are really turning on that. There's phrases like work harder or work smarter, not harder, blah, blah, blah. I mean, it's changing. That's really changing. And that kind of ethic, I mean, being able to do where there is virtue is in being willing and, not necessarily even maybe able, but being willing to do whatever it takes to achieve your dreams and to achieve happiness. But again, none of that means hard work. Okay, so I agree with the statement that this person made. I don't necessarily agree that I'm ready for the robots to just take it all over. I'm not saying that I'd stop anybody from doing that. I'm not saying that that's wrong or bad or something like that. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying, for me personally, I'm not prepared for, I'm not convinced, nor am I prepared for that kind of future. I mean, let me tell you, look, there's a very old saying in robotics, okay, in the robotics field. And it's an old saying. It's been around for a long, long, long time. Okay. And that is, you never understand just how smart a moron really is until you try to program a robot. Okay. And that's why I am so far from prepared to just fucking hand everything over to the machines, to AI, to machine learning and all that, because, I don't have that much trust and belief that these things can even, do as advertised. Right. And that, kind of comes with the whole fully automated aspect, right? I mean, like that's sort of part of it. So, but if you want to give it a shot, like I said, I'm not going to stop you. Have the time of your life. And I mean that. Have the fucking time of your life, doing that. So anyway, there's my thoughts on that, on the hard work thing. If I ever hold up hard work, I mean that you put in the time to achieve a personal skill. Okay, that's why I always talk about Tony Hawk as the example. He loved skateboarding and he wanted to be the best, and he did what it took to get there. If it didn't take hard work, then he still would have did what he took there, and I'd still think very highly of him. It's not so much the hard work, it's not so much the time. It's all about the skills. Okay, like that. Just what it takes to develop that skill, and that can be a variety of things. So hopefully I answered that question. Okay, let's get this baby wrapped up, and I want to get to the question about working out. So, okay, here it is. You're doing good work regarding workouts and muscle gain. What are your thoughts on reps and sets? I.e., do you stay in a particular rep range, or do you like to vary it? Any thoughts on the value of focusing on overall weight lifted? For example, weight, X versus number of reps, X versus number of sets. Okay, so for me, and thank you for the question, and I love getting fitness questions because this is a real passion of mine. I've been working out for some time, and I get very kind compliments about it, and I appreciate that. Okay, as far as do you stay in a particular rep range? So there is sort of common wisdom in working out, and understand that I play a lot off of common wisdom and ideas and everything, that if you do a lot of reps with less weight, you'll end up with muscles that you'll still end up with a lot of functional strength, and you can end up with big muscles, but they're muscles that will only show when you flex, as to where, and you won't necessarily have like constant size. Okay. And if you do low reps, like a low amount of reps, as in repetitions, you only do like, say, 5 instead of 20, or 10 instead of 20 or something, that with heavy weights, that you will end up with size and a certain, and the same strength, but you'll end up with the size that shows a lot more. Okay. I am definitely a guy that's about size. So I am way more about, less reps, heavier weight. That's what I do. Okay. Because I am really going for, I want functional strength, and I do what I can about that, but I'm really looking to get that size. I want to be a very big guy. Okay. Granted, the genetic lottery did well for me with being 6'1", being a mesomorph body type, that I have a pretty good foundation, to work towards, being a really big guy. So anyway, that's a very basic bit, and I haven't questioned that wisdom. I could be wrong. Now, in some of the more interesting part of the question is, do you stay in a particular rep range, or do you like to vary it? I will vary based upon what kind of, muscle I'm working out. If it's like a smaller muscle, and technically a bicep is a smaller muscle, but that's not what I mean. If it's kind of a smaller muscle set overall, I will do a lot more reps with lower weight, just because honestly, like those muscle groups, like say traps or something. Well, maybe not traps. Yeah, traps. I was thinking delts, but yeah, like traps, along your back or whatever. Like a lot of them, they're not meant to be able to lift, like say you're doing side lateral raises, right? You're not supposed to be able to do the same amount of weight when you're doing a curl, Okay, when you're doing a bicep curl, like say you're doing 50 pounds with a bicep curl, it's generally, what I do right now. I'm not going to do a lateral raise with 50-pound dumbbells. Okay, like that muscle group isn't meant for that kind of, or that kind of scale anyway, to where you're matching what your biceps can do. That's crazy. So when it comes to those, I will often do I won't keep every muscle set within like the 10 to 12 reps range, and maybe a set of three sets or 4 sets, which is what I'll do for biceps and like tris and triceps and things like that. So smaller muscles, there's either, a lower amount of reps with kind of a higher weight with that, or I'll even do like, it really depends on the body type. And I'd have to do like a whole breakdown, I could make like a workout sheet of how I go about that. So there's certain muscle groups where I do that, but by and large, my overall philosophy is more weight, less reps. And sets are almost always 3 to 4 sets of whatever that rep amount is. And I usually max out reps at about 12. Okay, 12 repetitions per set. Now, there's a caveat to this though, okay? Because here's the question. It said, regarding workouts and muscle gain, what are your thoughts on reps? And do you stay in a particular rep range? What I do add on, all right, is that your body, okay, your muscles will get used to you doing, if I keep it around 12, they'll get used to doing 12 reps. Okay. So what you want to do every once in a while is shock your system and do 13 or 14. Okay. Like change it up if you can. Add a couple on, and really when you can regularly add a couple on, it's time for more weight. And then you can, then the process can, the cycle can happen again to where you're doing, low amount of reps, and then eventually you get to where you're going to shock the system by doing just a couple extra. Okay. Because your muscles really will get used to it. All right. They won't get used to the exercise necessarily, but they'll get used to the repetitions and the weight. So you need to shake that up. The other thing that's really, really helpful for muscle gain is partial reps in between. Like what you can do is that if you are having a hard time with getting gains, like size gains, say you're doing bicep curls, for example. Okay. Say you're doing 3 sets, 8 reps per set. Okay. What you can do is between 2 reps, like 2, 4, 6, 8, you could do a partial rep where you just lift a little bit. You lift like halfway. You don't do the full curl. You lift halfway. You don't count that as a rep. And then, you do one rep, 2 reps, partial rep. You go up halfway. Okay. Little hold, and then bring it down. Then rep 3, rep 4, then partial rep. Hold it for a second and go down. Rep 5, rep 6, partial rep. Rep 7, rep 8, partial rep, hold. Okay. Like that will shock the hell out of your system. And I almost guarantee you're going to see muscle gains if you put in partial reps. I mean, you could do partial reps every rep. You could do 1 partial rep. You could do 1 down, partial rep, hold, down, 2 down, partial rep, hold, down. You know what I mean? So that's an option too for you to consider as far as that goes. But yeah, just me personally, again, it always comes down to, this whole episode, this whole Q&A really has been about goals, right? Okay. It all comes down to your goals. There's some people who just want, they want to do American Ninja Warrior, and they want that like functional strength that can still look good, but it doesn't, you don't end up looking like Ronnie Coleman or Arnold Schwarzenegger or Van Damme or something. Okay. And, you're not going to get that crazy size, but you're going to be just as strong, and you're going to have like a lot more functional movement and things like this. That's totally valid if that's the route you want to go. Or maybe you just want to have an incredibly low body fat and you're not looking for mass. There's no right or wrong answer to any of this. Go for it. If you don't want to be muscular, don't do it. That's okay. All right. My goal, like I said, is to be just a monster. Like Stephanie calls me her orc, like I just want to be this like fucking beast. Okay. I hate to use the term beast because that gets tied in with alpha male and all that, but it is an applicable term often enough. I just want to be a monster. I want that size and that definition. Okay, that muscle definition, I want that. I do want to get to that cut look. That's kind of a secondary factor for me. Size is more important, but I would like to get to that cut look as well. So yeah, I am a big believer in the idea of, and I'm sure there's probably some contrarian views on this, and that's fine. But I'm a big believer in 3 or 4 sets, low reps inside of those sets for the bulk of especially the show muscles like biceps. Some other muscles, I may do different things. Okay. But like deltoids, biceps, calves and all that, I do the low reps. I mean, like, so for example, of one where I don't do low reps, calves. Now calves are usually a very, overlooked, for lack of a better term. They're a very overlooked muscle set. Or muscle. It's a very overlooked muscle. And a lot of guys who you'll see will have just this amazing upper body, great pecs, great arms, the whole thing, awesome deltoids, shoulders be huge. They'll have chicken legs. Now, I don't mean that to offend them. Maybe there's a reason that they're doing that, but it's just, that's a colloquialism that's popular for that sort of thing. They're going to have really, really skinny legs. Okay. Again, if you want skinny legs or you have it and you're fine with it, then you're fine with it. It doesn't matter. Okay. I don't mean to insult you. But I'm just saying that it's often ignored, and usually it's because people want to work on the upper body and they think that's really all that people care about. It's for show. I like to have a very even body, and like my delts are way more defined than other parts of me that I want to be. So like, I don't work on my delts as much, at least right now. Once everything else evens out, then I'll get back to working on the delts more, say, okay? But calves are one of those muscles, just like forearms. There's another one. Oh, abs. Okay. Like there's three muscles that you can work on every day, like that you can do workouts for every day. That's forearms, abs, and calves. Okay. Now, like forearms and calves specifically, you work those out to failure. All right. There's no low reps, involved. Like you just go as long as you can go and you keep going. And that's how you work that out. So you see, so that's like a muscle group that's a muscle where, reps and sets don't really matter. You do one set and you just fucking go to failure. Or maybe you do 2 or 3 sets, I guess you could, and you just go to failure each time. All right. Forearms, like that's a similar deal where how I work out my forearms. I do a lot of unique things as far as that goes, but I like to use like a forearm blaster and I just go to failure on that every day. All right. So it depends on the muscle that you're working with. But as far as like a lot of the real show muscles, like I said, low reps, 3 or 4 sets each, or low reps, heavy weight, really heavy weight. And like I said, 3 or 4 sets a piece. Something I've gotten into recently, I'm not a believer in straight bars. In fact, there's, meaning like a barbell, even doing bench presses. Like I've kind of been convinced that not that you can't get gains from working with a long straight bar. Okay. But that you are more prone to injury because your arms aren't designed to work in that much concert. All right. So working with dumbbells and things like that, I think is, maybe it's not superior, there's a lot of different opinions on this and I respect all of them. Okay. But just for me, I'm of the opinion right now, like that working with a straight bar is, especially at the stage that I'm working at, is tantamount to injury. And I don't want that to happen. So I'm generally just working with dumbbells, and if I am working with a straight bar, it's a small straight bar, so anyway, so yeah, I hope that answers that. Boy, we're just about to go on an hour here. So, anyway, yeah, I didn't think we'd be able to get into the technical question that I had. If you have any questions on what I said or critiques, please feel free to critique me and I will talk about it. In fact, we got the live Hangout Q&A and you can critique me right there, but only if you're a patron. Okay. If you ever have a problem with something that I say, don't walk away. You don't have to walk away. If you don't want to pay for the content, that's fine. I understand. Okay. And I have no problem with it, but I'm just saying, communicate with me. I like to think I'm a pretty nice guy, on how all this goes. And especially patrons, I love you. So anyway, that's it for this episode. Of course, new Sex and Science Hour this week, new Sovereign Tech coming out this week, and a whole lot of Patreon surprises coming up. And I mean it this time, baby. Woo! I will see you on the other side.